Hi everyone. Today we're going to work on continuing with the distributive property and the product of decimals. So we're going to be breaking apart numbers to multiply and use the distributive property to get the answer quicker. So through the use of partial products are part of a product. Students strategize and apply the distributive property to find the product of decimals. So we're going to be working with some decimals today as well. To start this off, we're going to do something, just multiply. I just want to show you some ways that you can multiply that are a little quicker than just using regular multiplication. And when you have a number that's ends with zeros, it's quicker to multiply if you just ignore the zeros until the very end. So if you notice here, I put the 2, but I'm going to put 2 zeros here. I'm just going to drop them down in my answer. 2 times 6 is 12. 2 times 2 is 4, and 1 is 5. And 3 times 2 is 6. Now the last step, since I have a decimal in this number, I'm going to move over one place. And I have to do the same in my product. So my answer is actually 6,520. Okay? If I were to do that just regularly, line up these numbers, that would take me a while because I'm going to have a whole row of zeros, another whole row of zeros. It's better to just do it the way that I taught you and move the decimal over at the end and still get the same answer that you would get and save yourself a lot of time. Same with this one. So when you're multiplying numbers, you always want to put the number with the most digits at the top. Again, this has 2 zeros, so I'm going to put that off to the side. Now, I always like to make sure and see how many decimals I have in my number before I kind of start, just so I have an idea. So I have 2. Now, I'm going to multiply. 5 times 2 is 10. 6. This is 10. And that will be 10 plus 1 is 11. I'm going to drop my 2 zeros, and then I'm going to move my decimal 2 places over. So my answer is going to be 11,060 because I moved the decimal 2 places over, so I no longer need these zeros. Okay, so that's how you would do that, just with multiples of like zeros at the end. But it doesn't always work out that way. So now I'm going to show you using partial products and the distributive property how we can also calculate the same product. So we're going to take that same problem that we just started with up here, and we're going to use partial products and distributive property to help us solve this. So you would have to first separate 32.6, 32 and 6/10 into an addition expression with 2 addends. Addends are 2 parts of the adding problem. So 32 and 0.6. Now you can't just do 32 and 6, because if you take 32 and 6/10 apart, that's 32 and that's 0.6, because when you put them together, you need the decimal. That's what we started with. The problem will now be 200 times 32 times the quantity of 32 plus 6/10. So we're going to distribute the 200 to both of the numbers inside the parentheses. So if you look, 200 times 32 gives me this, and 200 times 6/10 gives me this. Now, if you look a little further down, I like to do this mentally, so I take 2 and I multiply by 32, which gives me 64, and then I add my 2 zeros on at the end. I do the same thing here, 2 times 6, which gives me 12. I have 2 zeros here. Now notice I didn't put 2 zeros here, and the reason why is because if I did this, okay, this is 6 times 2, that gives me 12. If I add my 2 zeros on, I have to do that, but if you notice, this is a decimal, so it's one place over. That means I have to move one place over my answer, which makes that 120, and that's why I have the 120 here. Now, when you add these up, you want to line them up. So when you're adding, you need to have the left side aligned, and you should get 6,520. Okay, so we're going to do a couple more problems like that to show you. So I'm going to do 500, and I'm going to write it. I'm going to break apart my other number, my decimal, to 22 plus 0.12. Now this 0 really doesn't matter, so I can just cross it off and ignore it. Now I'm going to distribute 500 times 22 plus 500 times 12 hundredths. And I'm not even going to put the 0 in there. Now, don't get confused between your multiplication and your decimal. Now, again, I'm going to take this 5 and I'm going to multiply it by the 22 because I can do that mentally. That gives me 110. If you're not good with mental math, then you might need to use a calculator here. And then I'm going to tack on these 2 zeros, which gives me 11,000. Plus, I'm going to take and multiply my 5 times my 12, which gives me 60. Take the 2 zeros, put them on, but then be cautious. You have to move 2 places over in this number because you have 2 decimal places. So 1, 2 from the left, which gives us 60. Cross those zeros out. Add up 11,000 plus 60, which is going to give you 11,060. And that's our answer. Okay, so again, if I review, 500 times, we broke this apart into 22 and 12 hundredths. 500 times 22, 500 times 0.12, 12 hundredths, multiplied the 5 times the 22, got 110, tacked on the 2 zeros, then multiplied 5 times 12, got 60, added the 2 zeros, brought the decimal over 2 because there's 2 places in this number, got 11,060. All right, we're going to try one more together. So 400 times the quantity of 12 plus 7/10. Distribute 400 times 12 plus 400 times 0.7. 4 times 12, 48, 2 zeros, plus, whoops, 4 times 7 is 28. Tack on the 2 zeros, but always look, there's a decimal. You have to move over 1 place, cross that 0 out, add these 2 numbers together. So I'm going to go up here and add 4,800 plus 280, which gives me 5,080. Okay, so that's how you use partial products to help you multiply with decimals. Now we're going to head to the back and do a couple more of these, and I'm going to do maybe 1 or 2 more with you, and I'm going to have you do a couple on your own before going to the questions that are around the room, which are very much the same, and you're going to do the exact same process. So I don't want you using your own way. I want you to use the way that we're practicing here because it's important that you know how to use distributive property. So number 1, we're going to solve down here. Okay, so the first step, again, is to take this apart. So we're going to take 400, leave it alone, break up this to 45 plus 0.2 tenths. Distribute, so 400 times 45 plus 400 times 0.2. Now, 4 times 45, that gives me 180 plus 2 zeros. 4 times 2 gives me 8, 2 zeros. Move the decimal 1 place over in this number. Cross that out. So you have 18,000 plus 80, which is pretty easy. 18,080. Okay? So we're going to do another one together, but I'm going to have you pause throughout it because I kind of want you to try it on your own. So now number 2 is written a little backwards. No big deal. We're going to do it the same way. We're going to just put 100 out here, break up the 14 and 9/10. So I'm going to have you pause right now and break that 14 and 9/10 up in here into 2 addends. Go ahead and do that. So you should have put 14 and 0.9 tenths. Now the next step is to distribute. So go ahead. I want you to do this start part on your own. If you get stuck, you can always go over here and look at this step. So this is step 1, step 2, and step 3. So here's step 1. You're on step 2. Go ahead. Pause the video and try that on your own. So you should add 100 times 14 plus 100 times 0.9. Now, the next step is to multiply your first 2 numbers together. Remember, I always like to do just the numbers without the zeros first. So 14 times 1 add the 2 zeros, and then do your next one. Go ahead, pause the video and try that on your own. So you should have had 14 plus 2 zeros is 1400 plus, you have 1 times 9 is 9, add 2 zeros, but don't forget there's a decimal here. 1 place over, cross out that 0. You should have 1400 plus 90, which gives you an answer of 1490, 1490. All right, so your job is to do I'm going to have you do number 3 and number 4. So go ahead and write down 200 times 38.4, and then write down 900 times 0.7. And I want you to do step 1, step 2, step 3, and then your answer for both of these. Step 1, step 2, step 3, and then your answer. So do those and then check back with the video when you're done. Pause it, go ahead. So you should have had, I'm going to go through this kind of quickly, 200 times 38 plus 0.4, then 200 times 38 and 200 times 0.4. Multiplied these to give you 76,002 zeros, plus multiply these to give you 8 2 zeros, move the decimal 1 over, so your answer would be 7,680. Last one, 900 times 20 plus 0.7. That's how you should have broke those add-ons up. Then distribute 900 times 20 plus 900 times 0.7. Multiply. 9 times 20 is 180. Add the 2 zeros. 9 times 7 is 63. Add the 2 zeros. Bring the decimal 1 over. Cross it out. Add those numbers together to give you a total of 18,630. So that's what you should have. Now, for your questions around the room, they are all identical to this. Use this as a guide. You must set them up. You have to have 3 steps for every single one of your problems around the room. There are, I think, 11. So good luck. Do your best. Try your hardest and make sure you're showing all your steps. Thanks for watching.